Welcome back to the channel. Today we got another video by Shawn Baker. I really am enjoying his shorter videos. I think they're great for getting just a little bit of added context and supporting information too. So let's go ahead and jump into this one. Let's talk about eggs.
All right, eggs, are they good for you? Are they bad for you? Do I eat them? Well, let me answer the second question first. Yes, I eat them. I eat them quite frequently. Currently, my consumption ranges between 8 and 18 eggs a day, in addition to various other cuts of meat. So I definitely am a big fan of eggs. I eat the heck out of them. There are some people that do have problems with eggs for various reasons. You know, this is a neat meta-analysis that came out looking at eggs in relationship to metabolic disease. And what they found was people that eat eggs have less incidence of metabolic disease. This would be in contrast from what you hear from the vegan knuckleheads that tell you eggs cause cancer and diabetes and all kinds of nonsense, which is out there.
All right, let's stop here and go ahead and jump into this. So right there, first conclusion on the first study that he's talking about, meta-analysis. This is, again, observational data, but yes, it does run counter to what's generally accepted information or the generally accepted narrative that you receive, which is, oh, no eggs, and cholesterol, oh, they're bad for you, all of this stuff. But here you go. Most of that is going to be based on weak observational data as well. Here you have an observational data meta-analysis of observational studies. Results suggest that higher egg consumption is associated with a lower probability of having a metabolic syndrome in adult populations. Okay, so, and it says right there, hey, due to limited evidence, more global, well-designed studies are needed. I think that's a really good statement to have in a conclusion, right? Here's some honest science that's taking place and saying, we can't say for sure anything about this. We're not talking about causality necessarily. We're talking about correlation, and we just think this bears some more investigation. Some quality studies should be done around this. Let me touch on his first point real quick about how many eggs he eats, 8 to 18. This might astound you. If you are familiar with Vince Gironda, I have done his egg diet. Vince Gironda is an old school bodybuilder. He had several diets that he recommended. One of them was the 36 eggs a day diet, which unless you're a huge guy, you're not going to get up to that. So I know it's 36 eggs a day, but you should take things like that with a grain of salt and say, look, can I really eat that many eggs a day? What was the size of the guys who were eating that many eggs a day? These guys were, 200 pounds of muscle, right? So if you're not a guy who's 6.5 feet tall and weighs, 200 pounds and you're mostly muscle, then, or that's what you're shooting for, maybe 36 isn't a necessary number. But there are protocols for stepping up that kind of egg consumption. One of the things that when you research this that Vince Gironda was basically talking about was nutrients in eggs, including sort of like the precursor hormones that are available. Basically, he said that 36 eggs a day was the equivalent of doing a cycle of steroids, right? And I know that might scare people, but remember, back in that day, steroids were brand new. They really didn't know what the long-term impacts of them were. So what Vince Gironda was referencing there is it was the hypertrophy, it was the muscle growth that you could achieve with that. Now, again, like these eggs are just nutrients and precursor hormones. So you shouldn't think that they're actually going to be like having anabolic steroids, and that shouldn't scare you from consuming eggs. It provides you the nutrients that you need to build muscle. And when I was on it, I think I got up to somewhere between 12 to 16 eggs a day. Maybe it was as high as 20. It's been a long time. It was last October when I did it. So it's been a while, and I honestly don't remember the total amount I got to. I just remember that it was a lot of eggs. It was very difficult for me to do. I'm 5'6" and was about probably about 130 pounds, 140 pounds at that time. Uh, I did the eggs and I did steak, right? So with the eggs, he actually recommends you're having those eggs in the form of his shake or drink, and then on top of that, you're eating steak, you're eating beef a couple of times a day. He also recommended a sort of like a carb cycle 1 day a week, which I kind of played around with, but didn't really do much. So uh, basically, this was his diet to get you ripped, so it burn a lot of body fat and build muscle, add a lot of muscle onto you. And I gotta say, I think it really worked for me. I added a lot of mass, particularly noticed in my biceps that month, doing, the steak and eggs diet, essentially. And no, don't even think that I've given you a tenth or even really 5% of the information you need to know on how to do it properly. If you want to hear a video about how to do that, then I can go into that in detail, and really pull together all of my notes, because I spent weeks pulling together notes and watching videos and researching how this was done. So there's not very good, any really single video that I can think of that tells you how to do it. I had to watch dozens of videos to really piece together all that information. So if you're interested in that, comment down below so I can get a feel for whether that might be something that I put together as a topic. Hey, so let's jump back into this and find out what else Dr. Baker has to say about eggs.
Once again, this is associational data, so take it for a grain of salt, but eggs in general are a solid source of nutrition. They're a great source of protein. They're a great source of fat. They have a number of fat-soluble vitamins in them. Some of the concerns we've seen people mention were that, egg whites, particularly raw egg whites, contain a substance called Avidin. Avidin tends to bind biotin, so you could end up relatively biotin deficient. The good thing is egg yolks come with a lot of biotin. So if you eat them together, I think it's ideal.
I think this is a perfect moment to segue into another video, okay, that talks specifically about egg whites and the whole egg, because when I was doing my 36 eggs a day diet, I was eating them raw, and that was a big concern I don't know if I would say it was a big concern for me, but if you talk about that with anyone, that's the first thing they're going to mention. Oh, you got to watch out for Avidin. You're going to end up with biotin deficiency. And usually if you make a comment about eating even one raw egg, you will get that as a reply from someone who hasn't researched that significantly. So let's watch a video now from Dr. Sten Ekberg and get some information about egg whites.
Egg white, and this is a big surprise for people because this often tops the list. People think this is the perfect protein. They've heard all kinds of good things about eggs, and they think, well, egg white, that is the pure protein of the egg, and they are so sadly mistaken, because we talked about this sequence of amino acid, the ratios, and the egg white is incomplete without the yolk. A lot of the letters that the body needs to use this is actually in the yolk. So when we discard it, now we have an incomplete protein. And while animal sources are usually utilized at about 30%, this is the worst animal source. Once we discard the yolk, this is the worst animal source for protein. Just like plants, it's at about a 17% utilization level, meaning 83% of what you think is protein actually turns into glucose. And it's a common allergen. While it's not nearly as common as wheat or dairy or soy or corn, it is still quite common. A certain percentage of people will have a sensitivity to it, and when they do, it's often more so to the egg white than the egg yolk.
All right, I think this is a good place to stop and address some of these things. So first of all, he's saying that what you need is a complete protein. And what he's talking about letters is if you imagine the different amino acids that are in proteins, a complete protein is something that has all the essential amino acids An incomplete protein does not have all the essential amino acids. Remember, essential amino acids are just the amino acids that we must consume, that we cannot produce internally. There are other amino acids that we can produce, but as I've stated before, if you can get them through your diet, that's easier on your body because you don't know how efficient your body is at producing that particular amino acid. In terms of priorities, your body has a lot of priorities. If things aren't perfect, you may not get very much production of a non-essential amino acid that you need. Consequently, getting it from your diet and getting proteins that provide you not just all the essential amino acids, but all the amino acids, that's where amazing things can happen for you. And that's the advantages of eating a nutrient-dense animal-based diet. He talked about utilization, right? This is, your ability not only to absorb the protein, which is why animal proteins are preferable because they're in a form that your body already understands and can use right away without having to do a lot of changes and having to have it go through a lot of processing. So it's easy for your body to absorb that, but then you must be able to utilize it. Utilization comes from whether or not it's a complete protein or incomplete protein. If you're trying to form, a certain word from letters of the alphabet, say you're trying to form the word protein and you got 15 of every letter and you got one O. How many words are you going to be able to form? One. So that's not very helpful because you don't have the right ratios. So in addition to absorbability is utilization, the ability to utilize the amino acids because they come in the right ratios. Allergies are a common issue with eggs. It is primarily due to the protein that's in them. Some people are sensitive to certain proteins because the proteins, for whatever reason, they have a shape and that person's immune system has identified that particular protein as an allergen. Okay, this can happen, especially in people who have a leaky gut and have not healed that leaky gut and have not done the healing to allow their immune system to calm down. You have an overactive immune system. In addition to that, you have a leaky gut. In addition to that, you start eating something that might be sort of on the border for you, and then your body begins to think of that as an allergen, and next your body starts reacting to it, and now you're allergic to eggs, right? And there's a lot more nuance than that, but that's a large scale picture of things that can happen. So if you're allergic to eggs, don't eat them. And if you're allergic to eggs, you might consider whether or not you have some sort of gut dysbiosis that you need to heal. All right, let's go to the next video, also by Sten. This is actually the same video, it's just later on. Now he's going to talk about the whole egg.
Source for protein would be the whole egg. So it's kind of ironic that the whole egg tops the list, whereas the egg white is almost at the bottom, when most people think that the egg white is where the protein comes from. The nature packages things for us in wonderful packages, and the egg yolk actually has more protein by percentage than the egg white does, but we've been taught to throw it away because it also has cholesterol. Now, cholesterol is not a problem. That's not any kind of reason you shouldn't eat eggs. That's a myth. I've done lots of other videos talking about cholesterol, so take a look at those for more details.
I'll jump in here and say that the USDA, probably a decade ago now, has said that cholesterol is no longer a nutrient of interest for as related to heart disease. Look, if you consume cholesterol, then your body will make less cholesterol, and vice versa. If you consume less cholesterol, then your body will compensate by making more up to what you need, right? And it's not, cholesterol isn't bad, and really what we're talking about here is LDL, right? Low density lipoprotein is not bad, you need it. High density lipoprotein is also not bad, you need it. They perform functions. When LDL is not available in significant numbers from your diet, your body will produce it. It makes it internally. LDL then does things like shuttles triglycerides and fat in the form of cholesterol around the body. So triglycerides are energy. That cholesterol is used for cellular repair. So LDL is important. Where it becomes an issue is if the LDL is subjected to an environment where it's high in inflammation, maybe high in blood sugar, and it leads to oxidation. If you get an extremely oxidative environment, you can get glycation of the LDL. The liver no longer recognizes it, and now the LDL cannot be recycled and repackaged for reuse and delivery of more triglycerides and cholesterol. Now it begins floating around the body. It becomes that very small bad pattern, type B, the pattern B, which is a very small LDL, dense LDL, and that is when it can slip under the lining of the arteries if you have a lot of inflammation in your arteries. And now you get through the whole thing where it gets engulfed by macrophages, they turn into foam cells, and then it gets calcified, and now you have arterial plaque. But cholesterol, USDA says it's not a nutrient of concern.
So the egg is the most complete food source we have. The combination, the ratio of amino acids allow us to utilize it at 48%, which is way higher than any animal source. Now make sure though that it's still the high quality, because again, the fat, the types of fats, the ratios, they all matter. And if the chicken was pastured, if it had a natural life eating real chicken food, then you're going to have healthy components, healthy fats. If the chicken was not healthy, it can't make a healthy egg.
So let's go back now to Shawn Baker and what he was saying about eggs.
There is basically all the cholesterol in the yolk, and none of it's in the white, unlike, for instance, lean beef has a lot of cholesterol in it, believe it or not. I don't think cholesterol is a problem. In fact, there's a nice study. There's actually a couple studies out there showing that, for instance, diets containing whole eggs are superior to diets containing only egg whites for muscle protein synthesis.
Right. So conclusion, we show that ingestion of whole eggs immediately after resistance exercise resulted in greater stimulation of protein synthesis. So that supports exactly what Dr. Sten Ekberg just said, which is you get better utilization of the protein in the egg when you eat the whole egg.
And there was another study looking at cholesterol. Higher cholesterol diets resulted in greater muscle mass or greater ability to build muscle. So eggs are great. I think you should eat them. I think you should eat them. You can eat quite a few of them. Like I said, I'm eating, like I said, an average a dozen a day. And the results from that are quite good. So don't be afraid of eggs.
I think that's really all I have on this topic for today. So if you have any other questions, feel free to put them in the comments below, and we'll see you on the next video. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. It really helps. So if you enjoyed today's information, I provide information just like this to my clients to help improve energy, burn fat, and build muscle through an ancestral lifestyle and diet. My program doesn't involve gimmicks like bars and shakes, counting points, tracking macros, or even spending hours and hours doing cardio in the gym. Now, I've not only used this program to help clients improve well-being and health, but I also used it as a part of my own personal transformation. So if you're looking for an easy, intuitive way of eating and simple lifestyle adjustments to improve your well-being, then click on the link in the description below to book your free no obligation discovery call today.